All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, October 14th. We will go over some of today's moves. It seemed like there's a decent amount of things to kind of go over for this session. Once again, I feel like I start this video off almost the same with the same concept every day this week. But again, the overnight move greater than the intraday move. I did bring this up because I make a lot of mention of this, and I don't have anything in front of me about this. But this is from Sentiment Trader, a great follow on Twitter. But this is what I was referring to when you buy the close and sell the open over time. This is the relationship. So the blue line is basically that trade, buying the close, selling the open, and the red line is the performance if you bought the open and sold the close. Just an important concept. It comes up over and over and over again, but when I go over the performance, it just kind of jumps off the page to me all the time that we see this percentage change from the open always seems to trail the overall performance for the day. All right, so that is that. But yeah, intraday, small caps fell the most. Qs down 1.1% intraday. The whole performance for the day was down 85 basis points. SPY down 1%. A couple things like it seems pretty early on, besides some of the moves and the electronic, of the electric vehicle stock, particularly the ones in China, had a great day. So that kind of masked some of the overall performance. It seemed like today was more of a value day, right? You saw energy outperform a bit. You saw areas like steel. Industrials, I think, did okay as well today. What was the overall performance for the industrials? So yesterday I talked about how growth was the big outperformer. And, really, I would say, trading wise, if you took some profits yesterday in some things, you fared a bit better today, right? So if you weren't, in hindsight 2020, but if you weren't super greedy and took some profits into yesterday's strength in that growth move, even though the markets were down yesterday, there was some really good moves in growth names. If you took some profits there, you fared a little bit better today. All right, and or even on the open, I missed an exit. I'm long some Docu, and I missed an exit this morning just because I was taking some exits and managing the trading room in the first 10 minutes. And by the time I realized, Docu had given back the day's gains. So that's just sometimes how trading is. So you can see underperformers. Interesting, biotech was down about 2% for the day. The internet stocks, which have been hot, they cooled off a little bit, and the banks were down again. No surprise there. So to kind of go over, a couple things, weak breath for the second day in a row. So my main question is, did we basically, we've rallied really hard since the lows of last week. Have we lost the momentum, and is that it for that pretty decent move that we've seen? Well, I mean, I went over this during the 1 hour Q&A session. I tried to basically give you my thoughts on the market, and really, I think you just kind of need to see this play out a little bit. One thing that I noticed, right, and the reason why I'm looking at the 1 hour chart, I also discussed this concept earlier, is that if you're trading shorter term, right, if you're a shorter term swing trader, a couple days to a couple weeks, then the 1 hour chart you could really get some interesting signals off of, and you can find the shorter term trend. Now, if you're a longer term investor or a longer term swing trader, then really the 1 hour chart probably is not something that's going to help you that much, probably more the daily chart or the weekly chart. But for me, I'm not necessarily always a day trader because the money is made in the overnight market. But I do from time to time do a lot of shorter term swing trading. That's how I kind of have been trading a little bit more the last couple weeks. So that said, what is this chart telling me? Well, we took out this version point of control earlier in the week. We rallied a little bit further, but I noticed this this morning that price has started to get under these shorter term moving averages, right? These are really helpful for me because they tell me where the trend, if are we in a short term uptrend or a short term downtrend? Well, that short, again, I'll say it again, short term, but we've kind of broken this little uptrend, right? And if you want to look at this on the daily, we're still above value, and this still looks good on a daily chart. We could fall in a little bit further, no doubt about that. But we've retraced Monday's candle at this point. Nasdaq is more interesting to me because I'm just seeing another pattern on the Qs. You could see that I've drawn this. I would call it, again, super short term, 1 hour time frame, but it kind of looks like some form of a head and shoulders, right? We've broken the neckline. So really, I'll give you a nice level to watch. And really, trading, I think, is more about, rather than trying to make short-term predictions, because nobody knows what the market's going to go and what the market's going to do in the short term. The sooner you can accept that, the better. But I have some levels to kind of watch, right? So first of all, that little pattern is a little bit of trouble. And if we break this 291 level, then I see that we do have an air pocket down to basically 282. Now, I'm not saying that we fall down there in a straight line, but I would be more cautious if we break 291. We're kind of hanging on by a thread a little bit. This is an extension. This R1 Venom is an extension from this week's value area. So that's a decent area to the downside. So what does this kind of tell me? When you do this type of analysis in the using the indices, it tells me to kind of back off a little bit, right? Pare down some risk a little bit because the short-term momentum looks like it's kind of in danger of being lost, right? And again, this also has a similar look to it with the moving averages. The price is below here. So price and trend, telling me short term there's a little bit of an issue here. And then also, if you look at this in terms of market breadth, too, we've seen the last couple days the breadth has not been good. Remember that the advanced decline line for the last couple weeks has been moving to the upside. Now we're starting to see, a little bit of a change here. So again, this really matters if you're trading short term, if you're trading options. These are the things, because options have a higher risk, and making a few adjustments, right? Another thing that I talked about too this afternoon was that, I'm not, because whenever we get a little bit of a market dip, right? I understand traders want to see if they can buy the dip in that situation. I didn't really do too much of that today. I'm kind of just sitting on my hands a little bit, and we'll watch it play out, considering we're at a decision area, and I'm honoring my stops. If I get stopped out in a few trades, that's perfectly fine in my opinion, because there'll be small losses. Remember, I don't want big losses, right? We talked about that in the beginning of September. One of the mistakes that I made, right? Traders make mistakes. Every trader makes mistakes. I know nobody admits that on Twitter, but one of the mistakes that I made in the beginning of September, and I'm not saying that this is the same environment or even a similar environment, but I bought the first dip that we saw, right? And we know that dip went on, that correction went on for weeks in September. So just kind of have to be mindful of that, and just making sure that you're setting stops on new entries, and being mindful of how much money you're risking in short-term options if you're trading those types of products. Remember, short-term options, they're kind of binary, right? Either you're going to win or you're going to lose, right? And you don't have a lot of room for error. So if the market does change direction and kind of move down a little bit, put buyers will be rewarded a bit, and call buyers will suffer in the short term. All right, so some of my trades, again, I always like to show you, give you full transparency into what I'm doing, right? Because I think that that's important. I think that, overall, I think there's not a lot of transparency on Twitter, right? People don't show you what their P&L is. People don't, for the most part. There's some that are the exception. I always show my P&L at the end of the month, and kind of give updates along the way during the month. But were my trades. This L. So again, like I said in the beginning of the video, this was a lot about this Neo got an upgrade and just went off to the races. Just all kinds of option activity, chasing, chasing and pushing the name higher and higher today. So I took advantage of that. I was also holding a couple other things like LI. I also got into this XPEV trade today, which I took two targets in that today. Again, not being super greedy. Took a couple targets, left the balance on. I also took off this LI. Again, it was a concept that I talked about in the Q&A the member Q&A session today as well. That just be careful about your diversification, right? So even though these names kind of look different, a lot of these names are in the same damn group, right? Same thing. This has happened before in software too. I feel like traders load the boat in one group, and then when there's a little bit of a correction for some reason in that, or profit taking in that group, it could be a quite painful day for someone who doesn't, is kind of loaded the boat in one particular group. So just be mindful of this particular group. I made sure that I sold one of my positions in this group because I certainly don't want to get overexposed into speculative China electric vehicle companies. All right. I even sold this one too soon. That was a little bit of a mistake. So that's it. I really didn't do any major trading today. Netflix, which was a winner that I took off yesterday, right? I was kind of kicking myself this morning when I saw that, who was it? Goldman, I believe, upgraded their price target, street high price target. I was like, oh, geez, I probably took this one off a little bit too soon, and this thing Netflix ended up down all the way to 541. So I put this trade back on today, right? So took profits, right? Was smart, didn't get too greedy, even though I was kind of kicking myself. And I went on and I put a 555.60 call spread on, for basically messing with the profits of that original trade, right? So that's one particular idea I had today. Let's talk about Fastly for a minute. All right, so I'm not an expert on this company, but I do know some things that they have this one big customer, TikTok, and they basically came out and said that there's a lot of uncertainty in their business, and they brought in guidance, right? So here's the little note here. Previously issued third quarter and full quarter guidance that Fastly disclosed in its second quarter shareholders letter on August 5th should not be relied upon, the company said in statement. The current global environment has in some ways fueled our business, but has also created areas of uncertainty, says the CEO. While our preliminary third quarter results reflect the challenges of usage-based model, we believe that the fundamentals of Fastly's business remain strong. So, kind of interesting here. Number one, there was an option trade that hit today. It was mentioned on financial media. And, right away, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Because you have to know how to read the tape a little bit. If you're going to quote unusual option activity, right, you kind of know how to read the tape a little bit. This was something that we talked about and said, hey, that's not a new trade in Fastly. There was, I'll bring up the trade so you can see for your own eyes. I hope that I saved some traders money with this because, yes, calls went up versus puts. It's labeled as a cross, right? Meaning you could probably find a stock trade that goes against it for the exact same money. A cross is just somebody who owns stock says, "Hey, I want to sell my stock, and I'll substitute into an option position." Right? So that is not bullish. It's not bearish. It's nothing. Uh, where's my? Yeah. So here's the screen print that I took. I put this in the room earlier, but just so I don't have to bring it up in Slack again, I took a screenshot of it. But Yeah, so here's this, this was crossed versus stock. So if you're reading the tape, and this is to, traders who are doing this too, you have to be able to look at the stock prints as well, not just the option prints, right? It's not going to give you the whole piece. It's just going to give you a piece of the puzzle. It's not going to tell you the whole story. So again, something, I used to trade institutionally, so I know how to kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together because I used to be printing big block trades, trading them for big institutions. So here's your trade, 616,000 shares, going up the exact same time. So this is just a cross. So please, there's this option activity gets way overhyped, in my opinion. It's just one piece of the puzzle. I try not to make that many decisions solely on option activity. If it fits in my system, then it's another factor, right? We were talking about short interest too. I would never go long a company just because there's a high short interest to it, right? But it's a factor that should go into your decision making of, let's say you've got 4 or 5 factors that you're looking at before you take a trade, right? It should never be, in my opinion, solely on any one thing, option activity, or short interest or something like that. But at least, like, I can't believe they have guys on TV, sorry to say, that don't know how to read the tape, and are quoting option activity. But, it is what it is. If I could help people not make mistakes by widespread, dissemination of wrong information, I hope that helps. So anyway, we went over that. We spent about 5 or 10 minutes talking about that trade. And yeah, I mean, look at this thing, down to $89. Now it is bringing some names down with it, after the close. And, I think that if that happens, which I see it happening to things like Cloudflare, these names have been on huge runs, right? So any bad news, right? We talk about, do I think that this one situation should affect some other software names? No, I don't. However, all of these software names were basically priced to perfection, right? They've been on huge runs. So I bought a little bit of Cloudflare after hours, but just a little bit because the stock is up huge, right? And this is a name that I traded yesterday and got out of it yesterday, but it's still up a lot. So it's a small position to kind of take into a little bit of the after hours weakness. But I think overall being patient, and waiting for some of these stocks to kind of come in at this point, right? The super growth names. This is all about this type of thing happens over and over with these high growth software names. They make these huge runs, and our goal is to extract as much profits as possible when these things go ballistic like this. But then be smart and wait for them to kind of come back in and cycle back so that they become buying opportunities again. This happens over and over in trading, especially with some of these super strong names. They run up a little bit too far. We saw this in August as well. Then a bunch of them came in, they settled in a little bit, couple days, couple weeks, and then they become buying opportunities again. So be patient with this stuff. Don't feel just because you see a little bit of red to go crazy, going after names. That's where, as I mentioned, if you did this in the beginning of September, it hurt a bit because the market continued to go down for 4 weeks, right? Now, of course, there was bounces here and there within that 4 weeks, but I think you know what I'm getting at. All right, guys. So, take today as for me, again, I'm not giving out any recommendations or advice. I'm just basically telling you what I'm doing and what my opinion is. But for me, I'm kind of slowing down a little bit as I see that we're at a decision point, right? And October has been super, has been a super month. But again, once the market changes a little bit, I need to make adjustments too, and not trade the same way as when the market breadth was strong and as when price was, trending up in the short term. So adjustments are important. Honoring stops are important as well. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.